Welcome to the 140th episode of the Supernatural Occurrence Studies podcast.
So at times paranormal.
My name is Jason Knight, host of the show, and with me, as always, is...
And it is always Oscar Spector,
producer extraordinaire and podcast co-host. Listeners, if you'd like to skip our wonderful intros, go to this episode's show notes. There'll be a timestamp there waiting for you, which will take
and
you...
it says not to skip it.
That's right. And if you want to follow it, it'll take you right to the topic. So, Oscar, what has been going on over the last 2 weeks, my brother?
Nothing much besides, the usual work fanfare and researching for the episodes in the last minute under the gun fanfare. Besides those two things, it has been a relatively quiet, much lovely and much loved quiet time. But, there is something small. Family from my mother's side that I have not seen. Some of them I haven't seen in over 10 years. My aunt in over 5 are here. They're still here. They came last weekend from Mexico to visit for like a month. So that's going to be fun, showing them maybe the sites. I don't know what we're going to do exactly. We don't really plan that well. I'm sure they have ideas, but I know they want to go shopping for things that they don't get down there. I know they want to do that. They always want to do that. And they always bring over stuff from Mexico that we can't get here.
Oh, that's cool.
It's very normal for Mexican families that travel between countries. Very normal. They brought in this super dried up chili peppers or something from there. I don't know what they do with it. Don't ask me. But there's a special, I don't know if it's special, but there's a candy, a Mexican candy that is hard to get here. I mean, they do exist here, but they're not made right. It's not cool. It's not right. You have to get it down there. It's called jamoncillo. I don't know how to say it in English.
Jamoncillo. Jamon, isn't that ham?
No, it's not. It's not meat. I don't know why. I don't know why it's called that either. Jamoncillo and I got a few bricks of that, and I've been eating it here and there every day. It's
bricks?
these little bricks. They're like packaged and cut as little bricks.
Oh, okay.
And you just pick at it. It just comes apart really easily. And I know there's caramel in it. I don't know what else is in it, but it's delicious. And one of the great mysteries they do not question. And I've been eating that. And it's been fun getting in touch with them. One of them, my cousin, who I haven't seen in over 10 years. Last time I saw her, she was barely entering high school or something. Now she's like a teacher, kind of like Katie Sparrow. She's a teacher for 3rd grade, and she was telling me some stories there. It was really fun. She just got the job recently. And she's like, oh my God, she's all grown up and stuff. I'm just messing with her. It's great. So yeah, that's really been the biggest news, besides watching, things like Loki, for example. I've been watching a lot of stuff lately, like everyone out there. Oh no, there is something. Oh, I haven't gotten it yet, but maybe this will be fun. Because we're not a horror. I mean, we delve into horror stuff here, but we don't review horror movies. We have in the past, but so I guess maybe this is relevant. I found, I don't know if it's true. I don't know how real it is or how cool it is because I haven't seen it yet. But I found these kind of rare horror movies that are only available in physical form. They're not available online. And I try to find them, I guess. Couldn't find them. And I heard that these horror movies are pretty extreme or pretty hardcore and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested in that. And I just came across this website that was selling them. And so I bought 2 copies of 2 different ones. Or 1 copy of each. Sorry, I bought 2 movies. And I'm waiting for them to come in. And it should be coming in any day now.
So do you remember the titles?
I'd have to. I think so. I had
to
look
on
it
the
up.
Spot. Sorry.
No, yeah, no. I just reminded myself. It's not like I had this whole topic planned in my head or anything.
Dude, horror movies that you can only find online, only in physical copy, sounds sketch as fuck. They're going to really blow your mind.
Yeah. So I know one of them for sure is called Love Dump.
Love Dump.
Yeah.
That's what they called me in the Navy.
Yeah, that's right. You would swap the deck and then you would love dump.
Yeah, right.
I forgot. I think the other one's called Sadistic something. I don't remember. Sorry.
Love dump and sadistics. Oh, I'm thinking watch party.
You're thinking watch? Yeah, I would watch Party with you 100%.
I would watch party love dump for sure.
Yeah, although I don't know how you can see it. There's only one copy. I'm only getting one copy.
Shit.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I got that coming in. I'm kind of excited to watch something. It's been a while since I've seen something new and really like fucked up, So I really want to. That's why I just got on a whim.
No, I think $10. Nice. Love dump is not very expensive. No, that sounds awesome. We got to figure that out for a watch party. If not, you got to give us a detailed synopsis once you view them.
Yeah, I'll tell you if it meets my standards or something.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you?
Oh, over here, really getting involved into the new position at work has kept me incredibly busy, working very late hours. So there's that. But I guess the big bash we were going to throw is now come and went. Came and gone.
Came and gone, yeah. And
you were there?
Yes, I was there. Not too drunk this time.
Right, yeah. No, you were one of the few, I guess.
Yes, from what I hear.
I stayed quite sober. My wife did as well, for the most part. But yeah, it turned out better than I could have expected. Pretty much everybody that was on our guest list showed, and then some. So the backyard was just packed. Kids were playing. People were playing football in bags, and the pool was disgustingly crowded, which is great. The food came out great. The New Orleans shrimp boil, people were raving about it. All the tamales and drinks, and seeing friends I haven't seen in, almost 10 years. It was great. But, then when the sun went down, things kind of went south from there. You never know what you're going to get at a Jason Knight party, I guess. And just, people were, what's the word I'm looking for? People were
really into the spirits.
Yeah, really into the spirits, yes. And, people that shouldn't have been together maybe wound up together. A little bit of violence here and there. Yeah, it turned out.
It kind of reminded me of like a high school rager. And I'm like, you're like 50. Why are you having these parties still? No, I mean, it's really cool that you do. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, daytime, wonderful. Nighttime, sloppy and things I don't want to think about ever again.
Right.
But you know what? I can't wait to do it again next year.
Right. I know. Well, I know. It's not going to stop that. If anything, it'll just guarantee more. I had a lot of fun for sure. I had to leave a little earlier than usual. Usually I'm one of the last to leave.
Yeah.
Because I'm always one of the last to get there. I get there so late usually. I'm the late guy. I'm like, every time I get there usually, except for this time. This time I got there early enough.
Yeah, you did.
The food was still being prepared. I'm like, holy shit, I never seen it being warm, the food. I never get here early enough for it to be warm still. But anyway, this time it was the reverse. I got there early enough, but I had to leave. I don't remember why anymore. Anyway, but yeah, it was fun though. A lot of fun.
Good. I'm glad.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Glad you had a good time. So yeah, really, that's about it. And here we are, ready to record Abu Tubar Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Abu Fun Times Part 2. Although I definitely mischaracterized Abu Tubar the first time, calling him Abu Fun Times. He was not a fun individual at all. He was quite the psychopath.
Pretty much quite the psychopath. I mean, it's going to be a lot more to this fucking guy. But I do have questions for you, actually, along the way about him. I'll save it. I was going to ask you just now, but like, I like your name though, Abu Fun Times. It's kind of a fun name because, as I explained in the last one, Abu means father of or the owner of. So like,
Father Fun Times.
Father Fun Times. Kind of fun to imagine,
Yeah, so listeners, this is definitely a part 2. Please go back to episode 139 to catch up. Oscar, once again, really raised the bar on himself. He doesn't do short, quick topics. He really...
No, I just don't do easy.
There you go.
It has to be complicated. It has to be like complex. It's like if I'm studying to be a neurosurgeon, I have to practice and I have to learn the basics. I didn't start with rats. I started right away with humans.
Damn.
Like it has to be complicated off the bat.
Yeah.
Like I do not learn. I do not teach myself any any good leeway. I don't know how to pick topics that are easier.
No, but it's great, man. It's great. So let's get into the contact information so we can start this episode.
Sure.
The easiest way to contact the Supernatural Occurrence Studies podcast is by visiting our website, chicagoghostpodcast.com. From chicagoghostpodcast.com, you get to all of our social platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, Patreon. And in case you didn't know, for just $5 a month, you could get access to a library of exclusive Patreon-only content. We'll be having new content coming out on Patreon in August. But right now, if you join, there is a library of episodes that you will not hear here on our public podcast feed. So what do you say?
Here.
Yes. Visit patreon.com/Supernatural Occurrence Studies podcast, or just click on the Patreon link in this episode's show notes, and it'll take you right to us. What do you say? Support your favorite podcast. We also have a phone number that you can reach us at, which is Chicago area code 872-529-0767. Chicago area code 872-529-0767. Leave us a message. Send us a text. We'll read them and play them on the show. Oscar, what was that weird noise?
I think it was, so every time, I don't know if you knew this, but every time you, it's almost like one of those like magicians or like a curse thing. Like if you start talking about the evil thing, like there's a demon voice that follows it, and it's like warning you not to. Like if you say the phone number one more time, I think you'll summon something. I think that's what you were hearing is the evil of the phone number coming on the heels of you speaking about it.
Dude, that's horrifying. Am I gonna?
It is pretty horrifying. Say the phone number one more time and you're fucked. Basically, it's like Bloody Mary in the mirror. You know.
Oh, don't.
I'm just saying.
Scary.
Just saying.
Will I summon Father Funtimes?
Well, you know what? I mean, depends on what you believe. He may still be kicking.
Yeesh.
Mm-hmm. And he might come. Or not care because he doesn't have a visa to get to.
Well, a lot harder these days.
Yeah, a lot harder. He's like, oh man, as a demon, it was so much easier to travel in the old days. Yeah, I don't know.
Good stuff. Oscar, you want to take a break?
Yeah, let's do that.
في يوم 4/9/1973
their mother
ارتكبت
and
جريمة
Hatem's
قتل
wife
عميد
participated in his crimes by helping him dispose of the stolen materials and covering up
قرب النفق، حيث دخل حاتم الدار مع ابن شقيقه حسين عن طريق تسلق الجدار إلى الدار المجاورة. And when the investigator directed his questions to Hatem, can you not steal? Without the first reason is that the plan that I was drawing to enter the house is an intrusion and the owners of the house will be awake. وبعد أن تأكد من أنهم جميعا نائمين بدأ بقتلهم مبتدئا ببشير حيث ضربه على رأسه، ثم زوجة بشير بشرى أحمد خليل معلمة في مدرسة الازدهار كما قتل ابنهما أحمد 12
In addition to that, which is that I was under psychological conditions that pushed me to kill, even if necessary, to drink human blood.
شقيق.
Listeners, welcome back to the show. Well, the lights are turned down low, the ceremonial candle is lit, and the drinks are flowing. Let's start this show.
I'm going to assume that you have heard the previous episode. This is a part 2, folks. We already mentioned it. And it doesn't say part 2 in the title. Again, I don't like putting part 2s on titles, but this is a part 2. If you remember, this is my first time covering a serial killer. And yes, we made fun of the fact that I can't do anything easy. So this is a complicated case. This is an unusual case. Unusual in many ways, and if anything, this part 2 will explain why it's so unusual. So expect a lot of like strange things. Expect some speculations, theories, educated guesses, but also facts. A lot of as many facts as I could fit in here. Of course, it's not like it's all sourceless. If anything, sometimes it's too many sources, and I'll explain all that. And again, this topic came to me. I want to mention this real quick. This topic came to me as a this idea came from me from a friend. Her name is Miriam, who is Arabic, and she used to live in Iraq, and her family, I think her family, some of them still live there. And she told me about this serial killer, right? This Abu Tubar, which I will be mentioning a lot, obviously. And in the last episode, I talked about his kills, what he was up to, his life story, as much as I could get, right? And but like on paper mainly, like, this is the job here. This is when he got in jail here. He went to Europe over at this time. But still enough there. And he instilled quite a lot of fear in the 70s, when he was ranging, when he was killing people. And she told me the story, and I was so intrigued by it. I was more intrigued when I was reading up on this guy that day when she told me. And it was fascinating because of what people were saying about him. I'm like, this can't all be true. And obviously, the answer wasn't so easy. It's a yes and no. So we're going to get into that specifically, why it's so intriguing, why it's so misleading to find out information about this guy. And but before I get too far ahead, first things first. Previously on the Supernatural Occurrence Studies podcast. Earlier, I talked about the Ba'ath Party that took control of Iraq in the 1960s. This is the political movement that Saddam Hussein, as mentioned earlier, Abu Tubar, or the Hatchet Man, is the nickname given to this man. Quote, in 1971, Iraq was going through a massive cultural shift. Back in 1958, the military overthrew the monarchy that ruled Iraq. The Baathists were on a mission to strip Iraqi citizens of their humanity and their basic rights of peace, dignity, and respect for human beings. They put people in prison without formal charges. They tortured and executed people on a massive scale. They suppressed all freedoms. Iraq was in a constant state of fear and paranoia under the Ba'ath Party. Abu Tubar, or the Hatchet Man, is the nickname given to this man, believed to be Baghdad's first serial killer, actually. After safely checking to see that everyone was sound asleep, Abu Tubar immediately brandished his iron bar to kill all 4 family members. Once the family was gone, Abu Tubar and Hassoun lowered the bodies from the roof and placed the 3 male bodies in the bathtub and Bushra in her bed. According to confession, this family resided in the Karada Maryam region of Baghdad, some 200 meters from the gate of the Republican Palace. She was attacked. After putting Jean's wife to the ground, after 1 blow to the head, Abu Tubar met with Jean Ernest and one of his 2 daughters who were dispatched via steel rod just as easily. Many people over the decades, especially those in Baghdad in the 1970s, believed Abu Tubar killed many more people. While much of these dark speculations came from the confession, every crime,
at the center of our world lies the Middle East, and at its very heart, the ancient land which is Iraq.
This episode will be a little looser than the last, in order to fit the combination of theories and educated guesses, along with the facts I've already relayed before, and other information that will be newly introduced. Today, we will be discussing what I couldn't fit into the last show, either because it raised too many questions and conversation branches, or it distracted from the information I was sometimes barely able to find. We will discuss the secret police under the Ba'ath Party and how their involvement affected this case. We will talk about some of the details left quiet in the last show from the sources I put my weight on to shine light on Abu Tubar. One of those sources, for example, is a 15-page article that almost reads like a dossier about everything the government of Iraq must have approved for public consumption, and it is supported by the police force and specific members from the 1970s that apprehended the serial killer. Much of that information is told from their perspective. Another source is from a memoir I mentioned on the last episode, written by a woman named
Jum'an Kubba.
It is her as a child in the 70s, as well as her family's life story under the thumb of the spiteful and evil, you could say, Ba'ath Party that subjugated and terrorized the people of Baghdad. Her point of view is unique in the sense that she represents not only the public, like as a source for the public, as well as other sources, but the wealthy as well. The fact that her family was wealthy is significant to a portion of the story. Other sources and details will trickle in along the way too. And I originally had some crazy stuff that I had to cut out. Actually, I'll explain more later on this one. But I had all these reports from Amnesty International and all these other agencies that did reporting on that era of Baghdad. But ended up being a little too far-fetched. I'll explain why later. Anyway, I did manage to find a somewhat sustainable outline, barely, that disperses the facts and theories in a nice way by dividing this show into 3 sections: the people, the establishment, and the other, which is a way of saying the rest. This is how best to lend different perspectives on the Hatchet Man, which again, you might remember Abu Tubar in Arabic means the Hatchet Man. We will try to answer those questions I asked about the famed Iraqi serial killer. Remember at the end of the show? What happened to Abu Tubar during those quiet months between his last kill and his arrest? Is there evidence that supports the public to think that he's killed more? What were the politics like during Abu Tubar's crimes? What really happened to Abu Tubar when he was living in Europe? What were the authorities and secret police up to during the killings, and do they connect? These questions and more will be tackled today as I welcome you into the Republic of Paranoia. One question I asked about this case is how did Abu Tubar become so feared, 1, in Baghdad when he was active, and 2, for generations afterwards? Was it some combination of details, like the home invasions plus the rapid rate of the crimes? Was it the news coupled with the alarming rise of police cars roaming the streets? Was it the fact that while other houses were being robbed, the houses Abu Tubar picked added murder to them? Maybe we will never know. Some busybody neighbor heard or made up some details about Abu Tubar doing a crazy this and a heinous that, and it spread like wildfire. Regardless, this man sparked great fear and paranoia, and the people of Baghdad responded. Quote, the citizens of Baghdad at the time became worried and very fearful. People in Baghdad became more cautious. They became very protective. Individuals no longer went out alone, began to trim any trees and bushes around the neighborhood to have a clear view of any potential hiding areas, and added more lights to keep them on at night for security. Being used to a safe environment in Iraq, these acts of Abu Tubar created tension and anxiety, which paralyzed the country. People began to create curfews for themselves and lock their homes in more regularly. Television programs began to give safety instructions to viewers, and so did call-in shows to train the citizens what to do if they saw him or any suspicious acts being found, unquote.
So this reminds me so much of New York during the Summer of Sam. Just that, only this is, of course, is a country as opposed to a state. But just the intense paranoia, the locking down, the women were dyeing their hair.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Every night it was covered so heavily on the news, the newspaper, what to do and what not to do during his short reign. That's kind of what it reminds me of. And then the other point I wanted to make, I just didn't want to interrupt your flow. Okay. Miriam, the one who graciously lent the translations in part 1 here, or the Republic of Fear. I know you hate parts, part That's 1, okay. Part 2. Didn't you say, and she's your age, correct?
No, she's like late 20s.
Okay. But just growing up in Iraq, didn't she hear about this, and didn't her parents know and kind of use it as a fear tactic?
Yeah, she did. The way she made it sound, definitely, it was like, well, she didn't say like, oh, it was to ward me from stranger dangers or anything, but it did sound that way when she was telling me, and the fact that her parents still like, with like, all this, I don't know what they remember, but from that time period, but they clearly hasn't gone at all. And they tell all generations after about this serial killer all the time to their children. So like, watch out, or to like, hey, like, this really happened or something, like a warning, like this happened in our city. But this is very much like the New York thing, actually, much more, because it did happen almost exclusively in Baghdad. Iraq didn't know about it, obviously, and Iraq was in trouble, but Baghdad was really the city that
I see. Gotcha.
So it is like the New York thing more. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, she was told. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of, I don't have that in my childhood. Like my parents didn't tell me like stories like that. I didn't grow up with that, but I know people have. So it must be like one of those.
Yeah. For me, it was John Wayne Gacy.
Right.
Definitely John Wayne Gacy. Don't break curfew. Don't do stupid shit without your parents knowing, because someone like Gacy could get you,
Right.
And the other thing was stay out of these particular tract of woods on certain nights of the month, because the Satanists will get you.
A Satanist, right?
So those were two that I remember distinctly, never forget. But
yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway, carrying on here. So that quote I gave comes from a memoir called "The First Evidence." Her life story is a great springboard for the rest of the show. In her book, Human Kuba talks about her memories in Baghdad when she was a child in the 70s, how her family was wealthy and her parents were adoring and lovely people. She gave many details on her upbringing and the changes that came with the decade. The bad times, as they say. She also gave that little bit of useful info on wealthy homes in Baghdad that I used to describe one of the murders. I don't know if you remember the outer door, the inner door, that whole thing. How people slept on roofs, things like that. The Ba'ath Party was the latest and reigning regime that overtook Iraq in the late 60s after other coups and much devastation. The Ba'ath Party was a secular pan-Arab socialist political organization that began their reign with great promise and energy. This Ba'ath regime may have started off well enough, building a solid police force, establishing sanitation services, and so forth, but they soon, much sooner in Baghdad, which was the capital, began suppressing the people, beginning with the wealthy. Human Kuba's family say this oppression was how their credibility as respected members of their neighborhoods and professions were being disregarded and refuted. They were mocked and harassed. Here's an example from the first evidence. And yes, it all ties together eventually. The father of the household, a Mr. Maki, one bright and sunny afternoon, found a man trying to enter the inner gate after having entered the outer gate. The man strolled in casually, and when the father confronted the man, he ran off. The family and neighbors quickly called the police, and as the brochure promised, plus the fact that wealthy people tend to get better services, the police arrived minutes later. Authorities found the man, and the father identified him, and the man was detained. It was believed that this man was the same man that was confronted by a security officer in the area some weeks back, stalking and being cryptic with questions. After Mr. Maki and another witness identified him in a lineup, this man, whose name was Hamid, was arrested. Some weeks before all of this, Mr. Maki, the father of the woman who wrote this memoir, was harassed at his office by this group of organized thugs that claim to speak for the Ba'ath Party. It ended with accusations and heated words, but nothing more. Back to the main story. This man who had threatened Mr. Maki at his office had come to him when this Hamid was detained. And this is what he said, quote, "The man yelled at my father, 'Mr. Maki, you are an obstacle to the party and the revolution, and I'm telling you to drop this case or it will be bad for you.' The detained man, Hamid, was released whether we liked it or not. It was orders from high-ranking government officials that this should be done. Even the director of the police was bewildered and dismayed. He told my dad that it was orders from above. He could not supersede these orders. No one could tell us anything. Even my Uncle Sadi, who loved us so much and who had some top-ranking connections, could not get to the bottom of this. We are now on guard. We locked up all the gates, even during daytime. We left many lights on at night all around the house. Fear of Abu Tubar and all these attempts to break into our house and the obvious involvement of some bad members in this matter made us all worried and anxious. There was no way to seek justice or even a mere investigation. These events were covered up and made to disappear, unquote. So they released this guy in this story, after arresting him, detaining him, saying that he was the guy breaking in. Fucked up.
But that was not Abu Tubar, correct?
No, this is not this guy named Hamid. This is just one example.
But Tubar is active at this point.
Yes, he's already active. She's already describing the fear of him as well.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So definitely. Mm-hmm. It's stories like these that make one see how people can go from fear to paranoid about the smallest thing. There are countless stories like this, and many, if not most, did not result so fortunately as the incidents this Maki family endured. So let's talk about this secret police. The secret police of the Ba'ath Party, much like others in history, wasn't exactly a part of the government. It was more of a creature of the government, right? Or the ruling regime. They worked alongside, and many superiors in the secret police did work on the political spectrum, but technically they were like an approved rogue element in Iraq. They used supporters of the Ba'ath Party as well as criminals of all sorts, not to mention the impoverished, sorry, I can't say that word, to spy, monitor, cajole, steal, harass, and most importantly, lie to the people of Baghdad to see if they needed to be murdered and or disappeared. Mm. They looked for dissent in the population, and they began with the wealthy, the prominent people, the tourists, and the outsiders as well, to see if their influence even whispered anything against the Ba'ath Party. And then, act accordingly. Kind of reminds you of Joseph Stalin, right?
Yeah.
Or a lot of dictators, really. Almost all dictators do this, actually. This is pretty much a dictator playbook scenario.
Good point.
But this time period that I'm reading on, this is not in the actual script here, but this time period that I'm reading, while it does involve a dictator eventually, there is no dictator. I mean, there's a president and all that. I'm not saying that has no one in charge, but not really the same. It's almost like they're dictatorless for a little bit here.
Okay.
So that's a little fun. One astounding thing the secret police did was during the summer, Abu Tubar was killing people. Hotlines and telephone security service workers were posted in each district switchboard to find and trace any threatening calls people were getting who could be Abu Tubar. The secret police would monitor, trace, and interfere with these calls all of the time. This added layer of security for each of the neighborhoods was a mark of how well-oiled Baghdad's police force operated, and it helped people feel more at ease. But according to what I read, it was piggybacking something sinister, another form of spying for the secret police.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Why, you may ask, did they install this layer of phone monitoring? You see, during his crimes, it was alleged that Abu Tubar or one of his cohorts would call the home of a family he was planning on murdering to scare them, that he would threaten and curse his victims just as they opened their front door to reveal their assailant. This is a detail I did not focus on in the last episode about Abu Tubar because while it was mentioned all over the place in sources and whatnot, there didn't seem to be any logic or evidence to it. First of all, there's no cell phone technology, so he couldn't call a home and be at their front door at the same time. And it wasn't talked about during his interrogation when he was caught later on. Furthermore, I think that it'd be bad form to warn your victims like that in advance. And if you take what Abu Tubar said in his confessions, he often said that his victims answered the door normally and that the situation escalated with a face-to-face confrontation, never a phone call that came beforehand.
So you think this is sort of just legend tacked on to the actual events?
I think so, too. I think so.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. People definitely believe this, though, with all their might, that he was doing this at that time. I just couldn't find any evidence that supported it. I think it's more of a theory than it is reality.
Got it.
Regardless, gathering information and manipulating information given to the people of Baghdad is how, secret police work. They operate. That's how they operate. That story about Mr. Maki and his would-be intruder getting released also tells us something else. It says that the secret police and law enforcement were not working together. Obviously, the Ba'ath regime eventually did take over everything, Utilizing the same slimy techniques, they honed in Baghdad to lie to the rest of Iraq and the world as to what they were up to. During these early days, before Saddam Hussein became their Joseph Stalin, before and during the Abu Tubar killings and the October War, the secret police had not gained control over everything yet. The regular police was an established organization, and many did their jobs well. They, like the rest of the people, were trying to make sense out of the chaos, and it ultimately makes sense how and why the secret police acted the way they did. It is why I more or less trust my law enforcement source, which I'll get to soon. Did you want to say something?
No, good.
Okay, cool.
Just listening.
Due to these paranoid and fear-inducing tactics, people did not know who to trust. They didn't know if a neighbor was a spy for the Ba'ath Party or that the best friend you grew up with will call the secret police on you because he's so afraid of being detained and killed.
Nazi Germany, man.
Yeah, that happens everywhere. Russia, too, everywhere. That story about the guy trying to enter Mr. Maki's family's house was done casually during the day, and it reminded me of Abu Tubar. Some of his crimes happened similarly to what the secret police did to harass people. Is there one bad seed influencing the other? I don't know. Who can say? But it does bring us to a crucial true story. A story that will give us the big first theory on Abu Tubar and his crimes. The following comes straight from Human Kuba's memoir titled The First Evidence. And yes, the story is about that evidence. Her father, Mr. Maki, had seen many incidents, not just intruders trying to enter his home. He tried helping neighbors when similarly sketchy people were being seen. The office building, which he ran, was also seen weeks earlier being ransacked and hostile youths trying to scare him into complying with the Ba'ath regime. This office is where this story comes from. One night, Mr. Maki received an urgent phone call late in autumn of 1973. Quote, the caller was an employee of the telephone security service working with the anti-crime unit. He was based at the Al Mamun district switchboard. This official government facility controlled the major telephone services to the city of Baghdad, and it was under the auspices of the agency that my dad headed. They operated a special service that traced threatening phone calls to people in the midst of the Abu Tubar crime affair that rocked Baghdad. Their job was to trace the call, identify the caller, and, depending on the situation, disable that phone line or hold the line for investigation or something like that. Unquote. The caller's name was Camille, and he was in high distress. He was asking Mr. Maki for help because he was so nerve-wracked to do anything about his situation. He said that a woman previously was getting threatening phone calls and believed it was Abu Tubar. So he, began monitoring all incoming calls. The threatening calls the threatening calls resumed, and Camille followed procedure and traced the phone call to a much scarier location than Abu Tubar, which was the presidential palace.
Oh, man.
A short while after Camille traced the call, people from the palace stormed into the building. They beat one of the other employees, a security guard, and then in dramatic fashion grabbed the tapes of the phone recordings to the woman and destroyed them. The thugs threatened Camille and accused him of interrupting a call from the presidential palace. After they left, a scared Camille and an injured security guard is when Mr. Maki received the call for help. Quickly springing into action, an enraged Mr. Maki asked if the backup of the recording was destroyed as well, which it turned out was missed by the palace thugs. He told Camille to not be afraid, that he was simply doing his job and he did everything right. He told Camille to get the security guard medical help and to come the next morning to his office with the backup copy of the recording and any person that witnessed the event. Quote, if they had known initially that they were dealing with the presidential palace, they would not have dared to intervene. The Ba'ath was above all. No one could stand in their way or tell them no. My dad was distressed. These thoughts raced in his head. That the government may be involved in the Abu Tubar crime string was shocking and bewildering. Abu Tubar may be a creation of the Ba'ath government. Maybe they were killing people whom they wanted to eliminate in the name of this monster. But Dad wanted to be sure of this. Maybe it was just a group pretending to be from the government. But then, who else will dare ransack a high-security government building? The telephone services belonged entirely to the government. There were no private companies providing such services like we do here. And who else possessed guns and weapons other than the Ba'athists? Maybe it was all just a big scheme to scare people, to provide justification for all the random searching of cars and homes that they were doing, and most importantly, to get rid of political enemies. No wonder all of the victims were somehow against the Ba'ath Party or had some grievance with this new government, or were families of prominent political figures. No wonder he, and by he she means Abu Tubar, of course, no wonder he did not just hit ordinary citizens or ordinarily steal, unquote.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's intriguing. Okay.
Yeah. So, but before I continue on that story, what do you think so far on that theory?
You mean that
that Abu Tubar is a fabrication for the secret police to do what they want?
Well, we know he existed, right? He is a person. But whether or not he was given free reign or told who his victim should be by the Ba'ath Party, or even the presidential palace. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Don't worry, I have more on the story.
Man.
I thought it was interesting too. So that is what the book means by the first evidence.
I see.
The story goes on. Mr. Maki started investigating this travesty and, of course, met with opposition. The son-in-law of the then president, Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr, a Mr. Munther, called them one day. He declared the investigation be terminated. I don't know why I said terminated, and that there was no reason to continue, and that there would be dire consequences if he didn't stop.
Oh my God.
Mr. Maki received this phone call while in the middle of the investigation, before he was able to announce his findings or involve other authority figures. This obviously told him that he was being monitored and followed, most likely. Being a man of principle and fueled by, understandable frustration, he reported that conversation as well that he got from this guy. A few days later, Mr. Maki received a call from a man named Abdul Fattah, who was the director of the Baghdad Police Anti-Crime Task Force. He asked for Mr. Maki to meet with him immediately, and so he did. That evening, he told his wife what had happened at the meeting. The Anti-Crime Task Force was located within the Ministry of Interior, and it was this unit that was responsible and designed to hunt the serial killer Abu Tubar. Mr. Fattah told Mr. Maki that they had a problem, that there was a serious security breach on their task force. He complained about how the frantic phone calls they expected to receive from distressed individuals have stopped coming in. They didn't get any calls. He was frustrated at how little success the police had with finding this serial killer. He said that people complained about the police never showing up when they were needed, and then when people got scared or an intruder was noticed. Mr. Fattah asked Mr. Maki if he could find out why these phone calls were not getting through to his task force and where did they go. Quote, I examined their emergency call system at their headquarters at the Ministry of Interior, and I found that the calls were being diverted to the intelligence office, Al-Mukhabarat. Let's say that. When people call the police never get these calls. Instead, someone at Al-Mukhabarat answers these calls, and they pretend to be the police. They tell people things like, okay, we're on our way, or something like that. And that's why the police never show up as people are complaining. The police are sincere and they do want to catch this killer. Both Mr. Abdul Fattah and I could not believe it. We were in shock. It's them, the Ba'athists. It's their entire creation. I now have firsthand information on this. If I had any doubts before, they are now dispelled. There is no serial killer. It is a creation of the Ba'ath government. Abu Tubar is the Ba'ath government. They killed innocent families. They are terrorizing people. The police do not even know about this connection. It is top secret. The whole city is wrecked with this affair, and it's all a plot. Where are we heading if this government is in charge of our lives? I fear that things are only headed for the worse. Unquote.
Oh, my God. Okay. Real quick. Let's think about this for a second. I'm going to go back a little bit. Again, I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but so one of the big things with Abu Tubar is the calls, right? He would call, he would threaten, cajole, all these things, and then bang, doorbell would ring, and there he is.
Yes.
Like you said, no cell phones back then, right? How's he doing too at the same time? Well, because the calls were coming from some harasser at the topmost levels.
Right. So, I mean, they had like a crew of people doing it.
Yeah. Phone hangs up. Abu's already at the door.
Right.
Ding dong.
So it could both be a true thing and a not true thing. For example, like maybe it wasn't Abu Tubar and his gang that was doing that, but maybe he was taking this whole secret police threatening people to scare them, made it seem like, right, that they go hand in hand. Or he was told like, hey, go after this family, and they know who to call.
Right.
There's so many little possibilities. Now, if you're this guy, Mr. Maki, and you're seeing it through his perspective, he thinks that Abu Tubar is entire fabrication. I mean, from him, he's on the ground in 1973, but he's never seen Abu Tubar. He's not captured yet.
Right.
Remember? So, like, he doesn't know that he does exist. Right now, his evidence tells him that he doesn't exist. And for all we know, it is convincing people out there listening to the story, even though I'm going to say more stuff. But it may convince people that he was still a fabrication. Maybe they killed a patsy. You think of Harvey Lee Oswald, right? Maybe they killed someone that isn't responsible. Who knows?
Wow. Love it. But
it does raise it raises a lot of shit.
It really does. Really does. And man, this Mr. Maki, the balls on this guy.
He had some balls.
Plowing forward. No. Yeah.
There's more. There's a lot more. I'm not going to mention all of it, obviously, but there's the guy, he wanted this thing stopped. He wanted to do right a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Maki was right, of course. Things did get worse. After the incident at his office building, the Ba'athists changed their routine to accepting all incoming calls instead of monitoring a switchboard. Right? Furthermore, they put their fucking office in the Ministry of Interior. Furthermore, Mr. Maki was soon detained because of what he found, or at least what he thought he found, depending if you believe wholeheartedly that Abu Tubar was more myth than real. What supports the theory that Abu Tubar wasn't real is how the secret police would have similar MOs to the serial killer, surveilling a family, entering their home, and harassing or detaining them seemingly at will. That people who disappeared were considered dead if their bodies weren't fortunate enough to be found. Replace surveillance with stalking, and it's not too far, right, from Abu Tubar and what he did. This whole thing reminds me of a few crucial details I talked about in the last episode. First of all, while motivated to get rich, Abu Tubar did target the wealthy primarily, much like these Ba'athists. Thugs, right? Whatever they are. Since records from that time period are minuscule at best, I couldn't say for sure whether or not Abu Tubar's crimes were against the political changes happening in Iraq, as Mr. Maki indicated earlier. One thing that is said about one of his home invasions, is regarding the murders of the couple living in the Mansour region of Baghdad, Majida al-Hamami and Rashid Murad Rashid. Supposedly, this couple was at best middle class, which is why Abu Tubar did not find much riches to pilfer. I should also say that the Mansour region was considered a wealthy region, so maybe they were on the lower end in class in that area. So what I found that interesting, I put that in there. I don't know if you remember that couple from the last show. I mean, there's a lot of names. I'm sorry, guys.
I do. No, I do remember.
But a lot of people thought that, not a lot of people, I should say, two different sources that could all be false, said that why did he go after this couple when they weren't wealthy? And it's because a lot of people were saying that it's because the lady, Majida al-Hamami, spoke out fiercely against the Ba'ath government. That was one of her traits in the 70s when the Ba'ath regime was moving in.
There you go. There's the key right there.
And that's why people highlight that because they weren't rich, or they weren't as rich as the other victims or whatever, and because of that, people thought that it must be because she was speaking out against it, and now people use that to fuel the fire, to think that Abu Tubar was either an agent of some sort or fabricated. So, a different and interesting connection is how bold his crime of killing John Ernest and his family was. Abu Tubar did it in broad daylight and across the street from the Republican Palace.
Oh my God.
If you remember from the last episode, John Ernest and his family, his wife and 2 daughters. The same palace that threatened Mr. Maki for starting an investigation on the task force phone line. Let's not also forget that the Baath Party considered outsiders or tourists to be nuisances and disposable, and probably a threat to the other nations nearby. So John Ernest and his family were probably a prime target to in general, to at least be surveilled. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you recall how the Ernest family, how they were in the process of either moving out or going on vacation when Abu Tubar killed them? I mentioned that as a detail in the last episode.
Yeah.
That could be something right there, that the secret police dispatched this family, or at least wanted them killed because of what they could say outside of Iraq. Hell, just outside of Baghdad, because during these early days of this oppressive regime, their influence hadn't expanded to the rest of the country yet. Not yet. It was heading there, but not yet. It is a good theory and sketchy as hell. It can explain how brazen Abu Tubar and his cohorts were at committing these terrible crimes. Which brings me to another point and more questions. I believe the Abu Tubar scare began before his crimes. Actually, I'll rephrase. I think he was killing well before early September, and that the people knew of him all of the summer of 1973. I mention this because I don't know if you guys remember on the last show. His first, he started body started dropping in September, early September, and mainly that month. It was primarily that month, maybe a little bit in early October, and that's it. But I think it happened months before that, and here's why.
Okay.
What supports my theory is that there's a sore lack of information. Besides the killing of the retired police brigadier general Bashir Ahmad al-Salman and his entire family, we don't have a solid date for these murders. Bashir's death occurred on September 4th, 1973, and it was the crime that lit a fire under the police that was hunting Abu Tubar. The influence of this man, Blue looking out for Blue, was an impact sufficient enough for us to know in 2021 that he was killed on September 4th. Otherwise, it is said that the Ernest family was killed in late September, but that's it. It's mostly on the word of Abu Tubar, and for all we know, all of this was corroborated by police at that time, but records did not survive. If we take half of Mr. Maki's theory, where Abu Tubar did kill and exist, but still is a creation of the Baath Party, then why use that fear for only 1 month? Kuba begins her book by describing the happier times she remembers with her family in 1971 before the crazy shit. When she starts talking about the accident her aunt is involved in, this is how the story starts with her. She mentions how Abu Tubar was already a big thing people worried about. There were no dates, just the early 70s, but we know that it is weeks later when Mr. Maki gets involved with the Republican Palace. So there's some wiggle room there. I think it's a lot longer than just September, Mm. Again, I can't corroborate, but I believe that Abu Tubar was scaring people as early as June, or at least July, and all the way up until the October War, which it said it was the only thing the people of Iraq was big enough to distract them from the serial killer, a war,
Wow.
There's another piece of evidence that supports my theory that I'll get into in a bit. I'm going to read one more part of the first evidence that leads nicely into the rest of the show. It's the time that Abu Tubar is mentioned in the book. The first time, sorry. It's in chapter 2. All right, quote. Those were the days of fear in Baghdad because of the serial killer Abu Tubar. Just the mention of his name brings back feelings of fear and alarm. Abu Tubar was a mysterious serial killer of Baghdad in the early 70s who murdered whole families together and marked the walls with their blood. He was vicious and savage like an animal. He chopped people up and beheaded them, dismembered them. He threw parts of their bodies all over the house. The crime scenes were ugly and bloody. Baghdad had never seen such a savage series of crimes before, at least in the recent past. There were some crimes motivated by robbery, and there were some rape cases and some murders, but they were rare and very isolated events, and they certainly were not such a serious nature or systemic brutality. You never knew when or where he would strike. No one went out by himself or herself, and no one stayed out late. The typical crime of Abu Tubar would start with a suspicious phone call by him or one of his aides. He picked a time when people were alone at home. The caller would engage the would-be victim in a useless conversation, threatening and cursing. And then there would be a knock on the door. The victim of the child might answer the door, and Abu Tubar, masked and strong and carrying a bloody axe, would overpower the victim or her children and commence bloodshed. The crime scenes were often marked with vengeful words or comments written on the walls in the blood of the victims. He also often killed people and dumped them in some remote area of Baghdad. The authorities searched homes and cars randomly to look for him, and on some occasions they announced a curfew for the city to prevent the spread of these murders and maintain control. He seemingly killed with rage and vengeance. He was not even a typical thief. In most cases, he did not even steal anything, but he did wreck the places after killing his victims. There were several television programs about him and his profile, and even some featuring eyewitnesses who thought they might have seen him. There were reports on what he would look like with a beard or without a beard, and individual costumes and clothes and different clothes and stuff like that, like showing stuff like that. Unquote. Wow. So what does that tell you? It tells you a few things there, right? That she has a lot of details wrong, but that's how people thought of.
That's what I was going to bring up, but please go ahead.
Yeah, like the axe.
Right.
I talked a lot about that. He used a steel rod.
Yes.
That's what they found on his person when they caught him. The blunt force trauma on the victims makes sense. They were not chopped up.
That was the other thing. Yeah, I was thinking to myself, oh my God, did I miss something in part one?
No, you did not. This is all on purpose. I mean, this is you're not wrong. If you're listening to this, you're like, wait a second, didn't he? Yes, he did. He did not chop people up, but like a lot of people thought this though. He's called the Hatchet Man.
Wow.
Right? I mean, it came from somewhere. And even a book like this, who presents this crazy and plausible theory, concerning the fact that maybe Abu Tubar is an entire fabrication, got a lot of that initial stuff wrong. This guy wasn't doing this extreme stuff, I guess. There's murder and there's extreme murder. He wasn't doing the extreme, right? He wasn't Mansoning it up with the writing on the walls. He wasn't right. So, but then again, a lot of people have said about many killers when they were active, and then later on it's found out, nope, not really. But people fear what they want to fear, right?
Yeah.
I put that there for a lot of reasons. I'll explain why. There's a lot there. This book, like many other before that lived in Baghdad throughout the 1970s, talked about Abu Tubar carrying an axe and doing batshit things to victims and their bodies. It wasn't just Abu Tubar's confession that shed light on the actual murder weapon, the iron rod, but it was authorities as well. They found him with the rod, and it was never in dispute with the police that Abu Tubar used anything different. The rumor mill business surrounding Iraq's first serial killer was booming. Via secondhand reporting, I managed to find two, shall we say, nutty examples of overreaction. Neighbors one night called the police and actually opened fire when they thought they heard Abu Tubar lurking. It turned out to be a cat, for example. Another time, a thief was caught burglarizing an empty home, and he feared being mistaken for Abu Tubar and would scream that he was a normal thief. He was more worried for being mistaken than going to jail.
That is hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other things that the first evidence brings up that I'll touch on is whether or not Abu Tubar was as bloody at his crime scenes as people thought he was, and to see what kind of reporting was happening under the Ba'ath regime. A lengthy historical article came out a few years after Saddam Hussein's fall in the mid-2000s that tried to set the record straight about Abu Tubar. This is where a lot of people's suspicions and concerns about Abu Tubar was put to rest. Not all questions answered, but some might say enough. One very interesting thing is that the article says that the Abu Tubar crimes began shortly after the coup attempt of Nazim Khazar. This is a little political, but very important to the story, and I'll try to keep it short. The following comes straight from the U.S. State Department website. So this is more official, I guess.
Yeah.
Quote, telegram from the intersection in Baghdad to the Department of State. Baghdad, July 1st, 1973. Radio Baghdad announced at 8 o'clock, it says 2000 hours. I'll just say the military. At 2000 hours in July 1st, that coup attempt by the Director of National Security, Nazim Khazar, on June 30th had failed. Statement said that Khazar and his unknown supporters had invited Minister of Defense, Lieutenant General Hamad Shahab, and Minister of Interior, Lieutenant General Sadoun Gaidan, and others to lunch on June 30th with intent to imprison them and then seize control. Plan misfired, and Khazar and supporters fled toward the Iranian border, taking 2 ministers with them. They were caught, but not before they killed Shahab and slightly wounded Gaidan. Radio and TV reading from Quran and the Shihab funeral set to 0800 on July 2nd. As of 2300 hours, July 1st, city appears normal, except for heavy security guards around strategic points, many of them party militia. Rumors of coup began circulating early morning of July 1st, following reports of shooting throughout the night. Chiefs of mission who were at the airport for departure of the Dutch ambassador tied shooting in with the fact that President al-Bakr's plane was unaccountable for 2 hours late, arriving at 2000 hours on June 30th, when returning from state visits to Bulgaria and Poland. I'm sorry, guys. This is written weird. I think the guy just typed it up and just reported what he typed up. There's a lot of missing words here. Yeah. Airport reception was unusually modest, and neither Shihab nor Gaidan were present. There is also rumor that several hundred army personnel and Ba'ath militia were killed in clashes on July 1st when militia went to take control of Camp Rashid, the largest military installation near Baghdad. Closest thing to confirmation of this is reliable reporting from a British nurse at a local hospital that about 1300 hours on July 1st, loudspeaker called for all personnel to stay on duty, and all available doctors and nurses were sent to Rashid Military Hospital. And at the end here it says, comment, while it obviously is too early to determine significant these events, certain elements stand out. Generals Shihab and Gaidan were well known as close relatives and supporters of President al-Bakr. They were the last 2 military men on RCC, excluding Bakr. Thus, plot against them could be seen as next to the final act and takeover of complete power by Saddam Hussein and the civil wing of the Ba'ath organization, unquote. So, I'm sorry, guys. It must have been written and then just verbatim posted it on the website there, which makes sense, I guess. It's an official document. But still, unquote. This telegram supports my theory that Abu Tubar began his criminal career in Baghdad in July of 73, not September. I think it does that for sure.
So how do you come to that conclusion?
So, because let's see, I mentioned earlier that a lot of people's concerns for Abu Tubar came immediately after this coup attempt by Nazim Khazar. And that coup attempt was June 30th. And he was obviously wrong. He fucked up. He failed. He killed one of the ministers, sure, but he was caught and then killed himself, executed in July. But immediately after July 1st, things started breaking down. With what the telegram says about the Camp Rashid, the largest military installation near Baghdad, being taken over. Explains all that. Explains the chaos.
I see.
Of July 1st. So that's my theory that that's when Abu Tubar started his reign, at least 2 months before people think it is, or people report it is, right? Anyway, I mean, this turmoil was the perfect opportunity, which I mentioned on the last show, for Abu Tubar to start killing.
Right.
Mass confusion between the militia and the people of Baghdad was a hotbed for criminal activity. That coup was on June 30th, not September or August, whenever Abu Tubar's victims started piling up. Granted, there is a chance that he played the thief role exclusively before adding murder to his MO, but unlikely, based on the evidence of the man. It does beg the question, how many people did Abu Tubar actually kill? How many more? As we now know, the police did get off their asses to try and catch this guy, even if they started later than they should have. So let's see what the authorities were up to. On October 1st, 1973, a comprehensive campaign was carried out, corresponding to Ramadan and on a Friday, to search houses, and is still a citywide curfew. This came at the suggestion of both French and Soviet experts that the police brought over to help catch Abu Tubar. Authorities sectioned off Baghdad and proceeded to follow the characteristics that those foreign experts devised, like a profile, kind of like a thing, right, to search homes. Baghdad International Airport was shut down, and it wasn't just the police that helped with the search. Party officials like the Baath militia and security services like the ones that guarded telephone switchboard offices helped too. So we have a lot of different people helping here. Here's something bold and crazy. Hatem Kadim Hadam, which you might remember is Abu Tubar's real name, was one of the comrades that helped search people's homes.
Get out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the serial killer was in the inspection campaign for the areas of Al-Baya, Al-Amal, and Al-Tabul, where he lived.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's amazing. Fucking guy. Well, the other thing that's interesting is a lot of these organizations that are helping with the search are also organizations that people, well, I should say you and I are speculating may have been involved.
Yeah. To 100%.
What the
bad party?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. 100%. Yes, the serial killer was in the expansion campaign. When the dust was settling on Abu Tubar in 1974, obviously later than this, there was a lot of political turmoil and public criticism that is way too complex for me to deal with right now regarding his involvement with the searches. But people got fired, is my point. I think people, and they're not saying it that way, but people fucking
you would think
out. He was on the paperwork.
My God.
His name was on there, apparently. Because if you guys recall, again, this is a part 2, right? So, in the history of Abu Tubar, the early days, he tried working for the government in many different ways. From as a police chief, and then
that's right
for the government, like their money lending offices. I don't know what it was, and then for a pilot, like something with the Air Force. So, he was probably considered to be like, I don't know, an old school, like almost like a veteran type. And that's probably why they let him search with them or something. He probably has some clout. That's my point. And that happened. So,
wow.
Yeah. Nutty. Another very interesting part of the article is a recap to an interview that was done in 1980. Aleph Ba magazine published an interview with the late police colonel Faisal Majoub, where he tells his experience of interviewing Abu Tubar. Interviewing sounds nicer. Interrogating.
There you go.
Yeah. The director general had immediately called for him to come and see if they caught the right guy. That this Colonel Faisal was pretty reliable for getting to the truth. Getting confessions. Let's see where am I? I lost my place. Hold on.
I hate
Faisal.
when I do that.
I hate. Yeah, it sucks. Faisal told the journalist that he always inclined to do his interrogations, his interviews, with courtesy and avoiding violence at all cost. It should also be said that he was given the green light to get the confession out of the suspect with violence if needed. Faisal began by simply talking to Hatem, which is Abu Tubar. Faisal began by simply talking to Hatem, but he wouldn't talk back, at least not at first. After several hours, he got lunch and managed to get Hatem to agree to have tea with him. Faisal arranged for belongings from Hatem's home to be brought to the station, which immediately told him that this man must be Abu Tubar because of the connections to the home invasions. But he still needed a confession. Faisal said that his excessive courtesy, the lack of violence, and the flirtatious white lie that he did not have access to any evidence led to Hatem confessing to being Abu Tubar. That's roughly how he said it. Maybe now is the best time to say that I do not know if this is as ridiculous as it sounds, or if this expose cut out a few segments of this old interview, or if there's a translation issue because this whole thing was converted to English online. Okay. Either way, Hatem confessed to killing the 12 people we know about. Immediately after confessing, Faisal was sent away, and Abu Tubar was sent to the investigative group that was in charge of finding him. And it wasn't long afterwards that the anti-crime unit came down on the rest of the Abu Tubar gang. So I'm pausing there for a minute because it's so interesting. So the article doesn't explain itself, because it doesn't know that I'm an American 40 years later trying to figure this out, right? So
right.
My best thing I could come up with regarding, he confessed because I was being too nice to him, is I think it has to do with the fact that I think everyone expected violence from anyone that detains you, either some cop off the street, anytime you're interrogated, if you're suspected for anything. I think violence is part of the allowable, like it's allowed thing that you would, I'm not saying just a phone book method. They don't care if they hide the scars, or the bruises.
Right.
I think it's like that. And I think this guy used like an unbelievable amount of courtesy, which any courtesy is probably already unbelievable amount, to make this guy talk. And again, if you follow the theories, if you believe some of the theories regarding his involvement with the Ba'ath Party, then maybe he was told to confess if he gets captured. I don't know.
Right. To keep the heat off the party.
Right. Or maybe confess to only a few killings. I don't know. We're going to get more into that. But the point is that there's more to it. I just don't know what it is because in the script or in the article, it doesn't say anymore. This guy just says it that way, and that's all I can take from it. But,
yeah, more flies with honey, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, and you might not know the answer to this, and it's okay, but do you know when he was apprehended and he's going through this very polite interrogation, do you know, what does he look like at this point? Is he like a fucking homeless bum off the street stinking, or is he...
I wish I knew.
Yeah, because the only reference we have is what we put into the episode show notes in the last episode, right? And yes. Which will be in this episode too, in the show notes of Abu Tubar and Saddam together. Saddam Hussein together. And he looked, like aces, right? He was all dressed up, smiling, everyone's having a good time.
Yeah, young. Yeah.
He didn't look like some vagabond off the street, crazy, insane mass murderer.
I can imagine he was, but no one describes him that way, and there's no pictures of him ever as Abu Tubar or after.
Fair enough.
That I could find. Not reliable anyway.
Right.
So you're probably not far off though, because he was in his 40s at least when he was killing, around there.
Okay.
Let's see. I found something else that was interesting. By now, you may have asked, what was the media doing? Obviously, a strict, rights-abusing regime immediately after taking over the military would have to secure all airports and, more importantly, any and all ways to communicate with the public and the rest of the world. I mentioned how television and radio was used to warn people, to give advice and safety tips for any potential Abu Tubar sighting or encounter. They did. And no, I do not have any sample to play, but something funny did happen shortly after Saddam Hussein and his Ba'ath regime fell. Iraqi television, plus radio and print media, began the onslaught of outcry against their oppressors. One of them took the form of a show just called Abu Tubar, which came out in 2011.
What?
It had a big cast and a lot of money went into its production. But what I found interesting is how closely their theories that Abu Tubar was working for the Ba'ath Party came to other sources and myself. Another smaller in scale programming came out flat out denying the existence of Abu Tubar in favor of pure government malice.
Huh.
There were reenactments of the murders, and surprisingly, many conveyed the bloody acts, the body parts, and other mutilation.
Oh.
Rarely the steel rod, rarely the metal rod.
Please tell me we have clips. Do we have clips?
Nope, nope. I have nothing. I'm sorry. This expose that talks about it mentions these shows as an understandable overreaction and one that makes any potential ties between Abu Tubar and the Ba'ath government seem ridiculous. So they're saying that in this report, in this article, that while they understand that now that the Ba'ath regime and Saddam Hussein are gone, that it's great to cry about like what they did and make all this stuff, but that it's also undermining what really happened, and it makes it seem like makes their theory seem ridiculous because of how much stuff they were creating. That's the impression I got from reading this article anyway. That it's saying. It's almost like its mother, like, stop it. It's like crying wolf or something. There was another multi-part televised series that came out in 1996 that supposedly held the truth about Abu Tubar. It was a documentary riddled with law enforcement interviews, crime scene photos, and more. I tried looking for a copy, but no luck, folks. I'm sorry. Of course, in order to get production approval by Iraqi officials, because right now Saddam Hussein is still in power. In 1996, yeah, he is definitely in power. Right. He got taken down in 2003, guys. Okay. Anyway, I tried looking for a copy, but no luck. Of course, in order to get production approval by Iraqi officials, the docuseries couldn't tell the public anything bad about their government. So no theories or investigations of Abu Tubar being an operative of the state, or that his stuff were used to hide other crimes. His crimes were used to hide other ones performed by the secret police. It was made with the intention to dispel false notions that people of Iraq, especially Baghdad, held of Abu Tubar. One false rumor that I myself found embedded in other published sources is that they tried hanging Abu Tubar 3 separate times and failed.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Don't ask me how. Maybe the public was channeling the Rasputin legend.
I was just going to say, is that Rasputin?
It totally reminded me of that right away. Another public opinion was that Abu Tubar was never executed when residing at Abu Ghraib prison. That he was released for being a valuable operative for the government in the 70s, and that his reward was to live the rest of his days in Europe.
What?
People thought that. A lot of people thought that. Like, no way he's dead. It's just conspiracy. It's no way it's true. The series includes the execution report of the death sentence of Hatem, which is Abu Tubar, which took place in the execution hall of Abu Ghraib prison in 1980. The paperwork had the official signatures, and the series reviewed the death certificate paper organized by the Forensic Medical Institute. The late forensic doctor, Wasfi Muhammad Ali, confirmed with the journalists that in August 20th, 1980, he examined the body of the executed prisoner Hatem Kadem, a.k.a. Abu Tubar. So it's shit like this that this docuseries was trying to do, put a rest to this fucking conspiracy talk. And they showed as much as they could about like, hey, I fucking saw himself. He's buried, But now we have a date, though, of when he died, August 20th, 1980.
Do we know how he died? Did they shoot him, hang him?
No, hang him. They hanged people back then.
They did hang him. Okay, so that is true.
Yeah. They didn't hang a lot of people back then. They hang him, and the forensic doctor is the proof, I guess, that they used for the docuseries, as well as the paperwork. So I think I'm going to go with yes on that one, personally, for me. So while we know when Abu Tubar died and that he was in prison in the infamous Abu Ghraib, I'm afraid I don't have anything more than speculation about his time between his incarceration and the execution. This is the part of the show where I was going to get into Abu Ghraib and what makes it so famous, but I opted against it in the end. After researching the horrible prison, I realized that 90% of the information begins in 2003, and nearly always about what the U.S. did in Abu Ghraib prison that made organizations like Amnesty International speak out.
Absolutely right.
It had very little to do with our case, is my problem.
Yeah, listeners, just Google it.
Yeah, Google it, though. I fucking read a lot, and I was like, I would have fit another 5 pages on just that alone, but I didn't, obviously. So it had little to do with our case. But there is one thing of note regarding this prison. Saddam Hussein, and let's face it, the Ba'ath Party overall, used it to hold those who spoke against Iraq and their changes. Abu Ghraib was used to hold Saddam's political prisoners and anyone they wanted, not simply thieves and murderers. Since records are buried or have been destroyed, I'm afraid the only sources are survivors, and none that I could find spoke of Abu Tubar, like during his incarceration. No one said like, "Oh, I remember the day they brought him in." Nothing like that.
Right. He was my cellie.
Right. He wanted me to call him Tiny.
How interesting. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Let's get into a very important connection. If you'll recall, on the last episode, I briefly mentioned that Abu Tubar was photographed with Saddam Hussein a few years before he took power as Iraq's dictator. That picture was provided on the show notes, and they will be here too. That picture is the genesis of most of the theories that exist about Abu Tubar. Through context clues, context history, and context evidence, there are theories that become a little scary if true, which again, we will never know for sure. The first is that Abu Tubar's escapades in Europe. What were they? As mentioned in the last episode, Hatem, before he became Abu Tubar, was fluent in Arabic, English, German, Kurdish, and Persian. After his 2-year stint in an Iraqi prison for stealing government funds, Hatem went to Europe on false papers he forged. Hatem settled for a long time in Munich, West Germany, where he worked in the smuggling business. He smuggled cars and weapons of all sizes from West Germany and Belgium, from both locations, to Greece, Turkey, and Syria, supposedly all for other smugglers and black market merchants. A good theory here is that Hatem was made or recruited as an operative for Saddam Hussein, or at least a splintered military faction that gave him the false papers and ability to work for Iraq's booming underground Ba'ath movement. And if he wasn't recruited, which seems unlikely given how successful, Hatem was in Europe with little to no connections, then his actions led to recruitment when he returned to Iraq.
So
what do you think of that theory?
So was Abu Tubar wealthy? Do they know if he was wealthy? Because I'm imagining an international arms smuggler is pulling in some good flow.
I don't know. No one talks about that for sure. And it's I do have one thing regarding like his lifestyle before he was a serial killer, because I can tell you about his based on his neighborhood when he lived in Baghdad as Abu Tubar when he was killing people. I can tell you what his home might have looked like, and it wasn't rich.
Wow.
But was he rich in Europe? I do not know.
Yeah, those European years, that time is really interesting. I mean, if he built up a good name and reputation as being the guy to go to get shit done, of course he might have been recruited.
Recruited at that point, or
makes complete sense.
Yeah. If not recruited beforehand to do it in the first place.
Good point. Yeah.
Because remember, Iraq and Syria were tight, but not in a positive way as the years went on, and it was negative.
Just listening to all your wonderful in-depth research here, I don't think he was just a lone psychopath.
Right.
He might have been a psychopath, but he had connections.
Yeah. There's a little more on the Europe thing that I found interesting. Oh man. Okay.
Oh, you had to put the mic.
I just don't know how. I don't know what to think of it. Okay. All accounts point to a sinful life in West Germany for Hatem, as he was indeed arrested several times for smuggling. He was sentenced only once in Europe, and though I couldn't determine which country, Hatem fled to Iraq after his 10-month incarceration. A note written about Hatem when he left Europe that I could not corroborate from European sources, but was said by a team of experts that investigated Abu Tubar's forgeries, like after the fact, after he got caught, was the following. Quote, "He is a dangerous criminal who smokes excessively, drinks French alcohol and arak. He loves women and has sexual relations with them. He preferred female doctors and did not hesitate to kill his victims if he was refused any desires." Unquote.
Abu Fun Times.
Yes.
This is Abu Fun Times.
I knew you were going to say that. I don't know what to think of this fucking note.
Yeah, I mean, what? I mean, obviously, character building to a degree.
Yeah. This is the first time I found out that he was sexually active like that. Well, that was the only piece of evidence I have that.
Well, let's think about, what, and here where my ignorance of Iraqi religious laws falls short, but he's a drinker, he's a smoker, he likes to have sex all the time. Mm-hmm. Isn't that frowned upon? Again, I don't know, but I'm asking. Isn't that frowned upon by society in general under religious law?
I think it's frowned upon about as much as it would be in certain parts of this country, but not anymore. Like it's not illegal. If that's what you're thinking, things like that. Not yet.
I was wondering if maybe that was an attempt to slander his character, his person.
I think so. I think so for the moral values that people kind of hailed for sure. But like again, nothing. It's all a combination of like unwritten, unspoken rules, and it wasn't exactly law that you couldn't like fuck around, or at least, I mean, the first two, the drinking and smoking, was probably way more allowed.
I see.
But I don't know. You're right. It is speculation for me too, because I did not focus any angle regarding religion or like upbringing of any kind,
right?
Like class, whatever. I did not focus on it, so I don't know either. But maybe you're right.
It could be.
Maybe it was written for that in mind. Yeah.
Right, because I hear it and I'm like, oh, I want to party with this guy.
Sounds like my best friend,
right? But maybe to the people of the times that would have been frowned upon, and oh yeah, he's a piece of shit. Of course, he's doing all these things.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. Who knows? So in 1970, Hatem forged a non-conviction certificate in order to avoid revealing any past sentences and made his way back to Iraq, where the powder keg of political turmoil was about to blow. That's what I know about Abu Tubar's time in Europe. I wish I found out more, guys. Like, I wish I had fucking associates, anything.
Yeah.
If Interpol had a fucking sheet on this guy, I have no idea. The second contextual theory involves Saddam Hussein's picture. The second theory involves the attempted assassination of President al-Bakr. I mentioned earlier about how Nazim Khazar took hostage of the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Interior while trying to flee to Iran after failing to kill the president. It should be noted that it was Saddam Hussein who appointed Khazar as the first chief of Iraq's internal state security in the first place. Internal state security was the official name given to, guess what? The secret police. Yep. By all accounts, Khazar was a ruthless man, favoring force as his preferred method of control. It's clear that he wanted to be in charge, and as ruthless as he was, Saddam was probably more clever. The political chess game that people say was that Saddam placed Khazar in the perfect position for him and others to purge people out of existence. Kind of nudged them to try to take over, and when he failed, that's an excuse right there to kill people, right? To eliminate the competition, shall we say.
Damn.
That's what people say. In July 1973, Nazim Khazar and 35 of his supporters were executed, but the coup attempt that helped unleash Abu Tubar to the citizens of Baghdad in June 30th, 1973, helped Saddam unleash the secret police on everyone. This is when the fear and paranoia really took hold of the capital city, and many say it's too neat of a coincidence that Abu Tubar was right there at the right place, at the right time, so that people would look elsewhere while the secret police sank their claws deeper as they killed anyone they wanted. This could mean that Abu Tubar was an operative under orders. The picture in the show notes may speak 1,000 more words. What do you think?
I'm still I believe he was connected. I think there was way more to this individual.
Yeah. I mean, do you believe, what do you think of that idea that he might have been an operative? I mean, a lot of people think he was into wet works, like he killed for Saddam, and that he was actually part of
Absolutely.
The whole thing with Nazem Khazar capturing him, fleeing to Iran, and part of the, executing him after or something. I don't know. A lot of people say all that too. I don't know.
I could see it.
I could see it too. That's my point.
Just look at that photo. You're right.
Yeah. The third and final theory involving the connection between Saddam and Abu Tubar is the October War. Many wondered why Abu Tubar stopped killing soon after the October War between Syria and Israel began. Some speculate that Abu Tubar was sent to fight in the war, or that he may have gone, voluntarily. There are no records that indicate this, but it can mean that he was an operative and he was told to stand down. Or maybe he took advantage of the people looking elsewhere in order to disappear, to end the murders before his inevitable capture.
Right.
After all, Abu Tubar doesn't kill again, as far as we know, which again mainly comes through confession. The strange thing that I keep coming back to, and which I talked about towards the end of the last show, is how Abu Tubar was caught. He was seen by a neighbor and a passerby robbing an empty home. That's only half of his MO. Did he expect anyone to be home? Did he expect people to be home originally? That doesn't make much sense considering how he was known for casing his victims days or weeks beforehand. But then again, he did have the pistol and the iron bar with him when he was detained. Maybe he was cut loose from his ties with the Ba'ath organization from Saddam Hussein's inner circle. His deed was done, and his thirst for killing people was either never there to begin with, or he had to then tone it down, now that his benefactor was gone. Maybe Abu Tubar was meant to be caught, maybe meant to be seen. His mission to destabilize, to instill fear was over. A lot of questions there.
Yeah.
I don't know which one is right. I don't know if any of them are right. Soon after his arrest, Abu Tubar was put in front of TV cameras to confess to the murders in front of everyone so people could believe it.
Wow.
Yeah. To prove to the people of Baghdad that the crisis was over, just as the Ba'ath Party was able to secure their grip on the people of Iraq. Can you now see how easy it is to fall into a cacophony of theories and paranoia? It must have been hell for people affected by this whole thing. I'm just frustrated. They dealt with worse. It is no wonder generations would speak of Abu Tubar to their children like my friend Marion, who told me about it. There are so many dead ends and incomplete theories and at work here that I've left out many of them still. I had to focus on the ones that seemed believable, the ones talked about the most, and the ones I tended to side with. What do you think is going on? I mean, you said that you think he's an operative, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's tied in somehow.
Yeah. But you also think he was real? You think he was bloodthirsty too? Or you think that's part of the whole fake?
I don't know. I mean, from what we know officially, his crimes weren't that bloody. I mean, right. He would beat him with an iron pipe. I mean, that's terrible, of course, but right. It doesn't seem like he has that sadistic bloodlust like we see in other serial killers. It's more, I have a job to do.
Yeah, right. It was more businessy.
And if I can steal an expensive rug in the meantime, in the process, it'll look good in my place, right? But I think he had a job to do.
He saw the Big Lebowski, right?
Right. And we had a picture of that rug in the last episode.
That's right. Yeah, one of the few things I was able to find.
That linked him to the murder in that particular location. But yeah, I think he's got a job to do. I really do. He's doing a job. He's moving on, creating chaos, helping stir things up, strike fear into the people. The Ba'ath Party is going to come and save everybody. Oh, no, we're worse.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I get, man.
Yeah, I understand. That's a very good vibe, though. Very close to mine, too. As I close this down, I want to talk about one last thing. I'm going to read a portion of an article that came out in January 2018. It is from Iraq, and I'm going to read the English translation verbatim. This is to show how hard this research was and how the facts can be skewed. Quote, Hardly a day passes without the residents of the Yarmouk neighborhood in central Baghdad discovering that one of the neighbor's residents has been subjected to an armed robbery by a gang calling themselves Abu Tubar, in reference to the infamous serial killer who was executed in the 1970s. Fatima al-Samari, who owns a large house overlooking the upscale street known as the Four Streets in the center of Yarmouk, says that she never expected what happened to her as she sees in the movies. She asserts that she was subjected to armed robbery on New Year's Eve despite the presence of her husband and 3 children at home, explaining to Al-Arabi Al-Jadid that a gang consisting of 3 people broke into her house and stole $30,000 and gold jewelry estimated at more than 10 million Iraqi dinars, which is the equivalent of $8,000.
Got it.
She recounted the story of her home robbery, saying, "My husband, my 3 children, and I returned from celebrating New Year's at midnight, and at about 3 o'clock in the morning, we heard the sound of the glass door of the house shattering, and upon awakening, 3 masked and armed people entered our bedrooms, noting that the rebellious people rushed to handcuff my husband and children and blindfolded them." She added, "They drew their weapons in my face and ordered me to take out the gold and the money," stressing that she had responded to their orders and opened the safe in the house and left them empty of its contents. It's written weird. She confirmed that when I asked them about the reason for what they were doing, they replied, "We are the Abu Tubar group. If you want to go to him and ask him why he killed his victims, we have no objections. We will send you to him." The most frightening thing is that the gang used the tabor, the machine used by the butcher to smash the glass of the house door and break the interior doors, she says. I don't know what that means, why it's written that way, but I think they mean the rod.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know why they put machine. Again, this is what I had to deal with. It is noteworthy that Abu Tubar, who is described as the most dangerous criminal in the history of Baghdad, was executed in 1973. He wasn't. After killing dozens of victims. And his real name is Hatem Kazim Hadam and hails from the town of Al-Musayyib in the Babylon Governorate. And that his nickname was given to him to use Al-Tabar, unquote. It's been weird.
No, anyway. I get it.
Yeah.
First, I mean, great job on these people's names, by the way. I would butcher it to high heaven. So
I think I am butchering it.
I mean, it sounds legit to me. The accent and everything. So this weapon that he used, was that a butcher's weapon? Is that how they would, knock out a cow or a calf, or is that how they would dispatch the animals?
Well, that's how the translation is written. I don't know if it's true or not. Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, that is some bad influence. I mean, bad reporting too, but to think of these young people like taking the guy, this serial killer, right, for their own purposes like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't the gang at least is not killing the families, right? They're just stealing from them and mentioning this guy's name.
Yeah.
But still.
How terrifying.
So bad reporting, because Abu Tubar died in 1980, not 73,
right,
for example. But that's my point. There were inconsistencies in every source that spoke professionally about Abu Tubar or that time period in Baghdad. A question I wanted to answer was whether or not Abu Tubar was extreme to his victims. Simple question, I thought.
Yeah.
Multiple sources said or alluded to him drinking blood, raping the women, dead and alive, chopping up body parts, writing the walls in their blood, and so on. Nothing I found was definitive, except for maybe one. The raping. My first clue was when Abu Tubar, during confession, described lowering the bodies of the retired brigadier general's family to the bathtub, except for his wife. I don't know if you remember this detail. She was found in her bed, dead, not in the bathtub with the rest of the men. The rest is your imagination, granted. Because again, I don't have crime scene photos. I don't know if they did a rape kit test or whatever they do.
Right.
So I don't know. The second clue was that note that I mentioned earlier that talks about his exploits in Europe, how he liked sex and wasn't above like taking what he wanted, even if he meant killing the women to get it. Like those two things coupled, I think it's big enough for me to assume that he probably did some raping going on.
I see.
As far as like, business, being all businesslike, just hitting them and leaving. No, he probably did a bit more. I mean, that's as close as I could get at figuring out, Abu Tubar's extreme nature and actions. The rest is all, I don't know, hearsay. I don't know for sure. Halfway through the writing of Republic of Paranoia was when I realized that this case is a choose-your-own fucked up adventure story. Because there is little to no way of shedding light on what was going on in an oppressive regime. We have to rely on educated guesses and theories and hinge on those few facts for dear life. I dare say, while I do not envy anyone else trying to decipher what is true and what is false, I must admit that it was a wild ride of discovery. After all, I did get a Reader's Digest version of the psychology of a city in turmoil. I read many examples of life in Baghdad under the Ba'ath regime and how a cancer like Abu Tubar was to be expected and yet surprising to the people he terrorized. I lament that I didn't have enough by any journalistic standard for the show, but I applaud anything you may have learned from this case, a case which is riddled with fear and paranoia.
Dude, wow. So you've asked me a number of times what I think. After doing all this exhaustive research and hitting all these twists and turns and inaccuracies, what do you think? Was this guy real?
I think he was 100% real. Okay. I think it's not quite as business the way you mentioned it, but I do think that he was recruited by the Ba'ath regime, by Saddam Hussein probably himself in those earlier days in the late 60s, early 70s, recruited to come to Iraq from Europe because of his good work in Europe, probably like making some good ties between Iraq, Syria, Bulgaria, all those countries he smuggled for and towards.
Right.
I think from there, a relationship started. And he became, I don't want to say he became like whatever, but he was like, I think it's like a shadow operative, like he was no name to anything. He was used for wet work when needed. And I think that, I think it was very probable that maybe he wanted to go to Baghdad, station himself there. He knew what the situation was going to call for, and he took advantage and he started killing people because he's always wanted to kill people, And I think he just took advantage of the fact that his connections with Saddam probably gave him a lot of leeway to do what he wanted.
Undoubtedly, Saddam had a cornucopia of individuals, either in his employ or just loose hangers on to the regime that were fucking fucked up, that were mentally unstable, that had no problem doing dirty bidding, wet work, like you said.
Yeah, it wasn't like, well, I was ordered to do it, so I had to do it. It was like, I love these orders.
Right. Hey, boss, you got anything for me today? Right.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's possible that he was probably told we're gonna be doing this in Baghdad. We're gonna try to create some shit going on. You want to help us out? And maybe he was just the most successful out of all the agents. Like he did it with style. He did it with a signature to it. Let's say enough where they gave him a name, Abu Tubar. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And then they just ran with it. They just took advantage of the moment and then ran with it. And he probably got more either. I don't know if more distress is the right word, but maybe he got more creative with his kills or wanted to kill more or just did it more, maybe less of it so he wouldn't get caught so fast. I don't know. Because again, the police were not taking over yet. They were hunting him for real. So, or at least the him that he knew.
So was his purpose to destabilize, strike fear?
I think it was there to destabilize the city. He just, once they all started and people were people's homes were being invaded and shit, and cars and stuff. I think he took advantage and he just became famous for it. So he did too good of a job.
Right, yeah. Employee of the month. So it wasn't to strike fear and destabilize, to usher in.
And Saddam's right. On Saddam's point of view, it was to do all that, but for him, maybe not.
Because now we have this psychopath on the loose. Anyone could be a victim, especially if you're rich. Let us put more police forces out there on the streets. Let us patrol the neighborhood a little bit more aggressively. Let us look at those phone records and tap those calls. Do you think it was something?
Yeah, I think so.
To help usher in a more police state, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Because the first hammer was the coup attempt right? That the assassination attempt of their president, which happened in '73, but in June, and then right after that guy got caught, and after his assassination, all this stuff started happening right away.
Yeah.
And it was clear that it was meant to weed out any supporters or any people that would be against Saddam and his organization.
Yeah.
So like while they were killing them, this added layer of fear helped control the population while he was killing all these political enemies. I think it kind of fits too neatly. Someone was telling someone something, and maybe it was all under like subtle, like, I wonder if there's someone that could help us, and you just fucking ran with it. I don't know. But I think the core thing that I believe is that Abu Tubar or Hatem, whatever, he wanted to kill. I think he did have this penchant for like viciousness or brutality. Maybe vicious is not the right word, or brutality. Like he liked violence. He liked stealing. I mean,
smuggling arms. And, yeah, right.
Time. I think he liked all that stuff enough to like wanting to do it. Not for a living, but obviously for a living, So he just took advantage and wanted to kill, and so he did.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Wow. Do you believe from your research that he is dead? Because, there's people that say, oh, Osama bin Laden. No, that was just a rumor. He escaped. We let him escape. Same thing with Saddam. No, he's not really dead. He's elsewhere.
Didn't they broadcast his execution?
I don't remember.
Saddam?
I honestly don't remember.
Thought they did.
But he also employed lookalikes, right? So,
yeah.
So did bin Laden. Do you think Abu Tubar is actually dead based on your research?
Yeah, because I also think that while he got state sponsorship to kill, it's like having Nike telling you, "Go kid, just do it." I also believe that he was let go. After the October War. I think those details of the way he was caught, just invading a home that's empty, not killing someone, either getting things wrong because he doesn't have a backup anymore, or not knowing. I don't know. It just seems like he was let go of any connections with Saddam. Like Saddam already got everything he needed. He doesn't need this guy anymore. He's not the type to nostalgically keep people around. Like. I think he let him go after the secret police and everyone was under his control in '74, and ignored this guy. And he probably got caught like the way he should have gotten caught the year before, with honest, like shitty bullshit criminal behavior. Like, yeah, there's some guy with the flashlight in the house next door, done. Gets caught, and obviously because of his whatever, he probably doesn't want to get tortured. He has to give the story that he was already preset to do. Just don't mention the secret police. It was about government. When he gets arrested, done. And Bob's your uncle.
And Bob's your uncle.
Yeah. Well, and then the rest follows. Like, I don't know why it took 6 years to like execute him, because back then you got executed the week of you get caught.
Right.
A lot of the times. So maybe that's something in itself. Maybe like, this is like your last thing. You get to live a little while longer. I don't know. I do not.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I love the way it all came together with the conspiracies as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great job. Oscar, I think you need to rest your brain. It looks like it's smoking from over here on this side of the camera.
Is it though?
You need to. This was great. Go relax, my friend. Listeners, let us know what you think.
Oh, yeah. Please let me know.
Contact at chicagoghostpodcast.com. Oscar, anything else?
No. I want to take you home.
Oscar, take us home.
We're good.
Great job, dude. Wow. Wow. Very good. Very intriguing, man.
Thank you.
And the level of research, seriously, I mean, that's exhaustive.
Well, I feel bad because I wish there was more actual real stuff to read.
But I think that's part of the story itself.
No, I know. Yeah, no, I played with it. I definitely made it clear that this isn't like so black and white. But the only thing I wanted to do is to make sure that I can. So I'm going to ask you two things. Did I succeed in two things that I wanted to do? There's two goals with this two-parter.
Okay.
The first is that part two was more interesting than part one.
It was.
Okay, because part one technically had the more facts, right?
Right.
That we know.
Cut and dry. Yeah.
Right. Okay, good. The second thing that I wanted to happen was that did part one how do I say this? Did part one instill more of what people feared, and did part two instill more of what people were questioning or paranoid about? Because I try to put the emphasis of what the people thought at the time.
Yeah, I think definitely more intrigued in part two. I didn't find myself in part one. I found myself struggling to come up with questions to ask, where in part two my gears were spinning, and I was holding myself from interrupting you.
I could tell. Yeah.
The historical part. It's always dry. It could be boring.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You got to lay out the facts as you found them from limited resources. But I think it was necessary. Totally necessary.
Good. And then I think I did my
No, I loved it. I loved it. I can't wait to hear the previously on. I can't wait to hear that, the synopsis.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go back and listen to this again. Definitely.
Thanks. Yeah, and I didn't mention this at the top of the show like I did in the part one, but obviously Miriam's voice will come in and out as I mention names still. I'll still put her in the intro. Like, I'll still put her voice in here.
Oh, okay, cool.
I just forgot to mention it.
Cool.
So all that will be in there.
Well, maybe, I don't know, could you put it into the synopsis? No? The recap?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to put some of her thing because I had her translate the confessions of the murders. So I can put like one of them in there or something like that, or like one after the other or something like that. And one of those like, the way they do recaps.
And then so her and then you, or you and then her, like she says it, you interpret it, or vice versa. Yeah. Dude. Yeah, because that'll set up right there to expect Miriam.
Yeah.
Right in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bravo, dude. This was cool.
Thank you.
This was cool. Go relax, have a drink before you have to start recording again. I'm going to export. I have to take a shower and get to cooking.
Are you particularly dirty?
Yeah, I haven't showered today.
Oh, okay. Then yes.
I got up late because I went to bed late. And then I ran all over the neighborhood trying to find a fucking place. I didn't realize my license plate expired in May. So I contacted my HR and I'm like, dude, what's going on here? I'm illegal. And they're like, oh, Wheels. Wheels is the company that administers our fleet cars. Wheels said they sent you 5 emails about your emissions. I said, I haven't received a single one, a letter, nothing. So she's like, all right, no problem. Go out and get your emission. So I ran all over trying to find emission places. No one's doing them because of the holiday. So I didn't take a shower. And then as soon as I got back, I literally had 20 minutes to get all the gear upstairs, jack into my mesh network, set things up, clear the closet. So I need to shower and then cook. Sorry.
Yeah. Did you get a ticket, you said, or no?
I have not, thank God.
Okay.
But I will definitely not be driving my car until I get right to a...
Yeah, definitely.
Because I don't think they can ticket me in my driveway. I don't think they can.
I don't think so. No, I guess not. No. Okay. Well, go shower, enjoy. Have a good day, man.
Again, Oscar, that was awesome. That was awesome. So
thank you.
Elizabeth Bathory's on deck. I'll start thinking about something else try to get a couple in the pipeline, and we'll go from there.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Enjoy your holiday.
You too, 4th. Man. Happy 4th. Tell Lexi I said the same.
Oh, yeah. I'll yell at her.
Text
later.
All right, bye.
في يوم 4/9/1973 ارتكبت جريمة
Hattem's wife participated in his crimes by helping him dispose of the stolen materials and covering up
قرب النفق، حيث دخل حاتم الدار مع ابن شقيقه حسين عن طريق تسلق الجدار إلى الدار المجاورة. And when the investigator directed his questions to Hatem, can you not steal without the first reason is that the plan that I was drawing to enter the house is an intrusion and the owners of the house will be awake. وبعد أن تأكد من أنهم جميعا نائمين بدأ بقتلهم مبتدئا ببشير حيث ضربه على رأسه، ثم زوجة بشير بشرى أحمد خليل معلمة في مدرسة الازدهار كما قتل ابنهما أحمد 12
In addition to that, which is that I was under psychological conditions that pushed me to kill, even if necessary, to drink human blood.
شقيق
3 people here.
I see.
And and I haven't seen him in a while.
Now, when you say she as cousin, is that Vicky?
No, different cousin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, much younger. She is. Her name is Monse. Okay. I don't know how to. Is there a white way of saying that? I don't think so. Montserrat. I've never heard it said differently. In a gringo fashion. She's like, wow, is she now 26? No.
Okay.
25. Anyway, and Vicky was older than me, so.
I see.
Different parent too and everything, different person. Anyway, yeah. And so that's been the latest in the family, and it was fun meeting them or seeing them again.
Nice.
They think I'm good. They think I'm crazy. They think I should cut my hair. So they kept saying to me.
I think they shouldn't come for after 12 years and tell you what to do.
Well, not like that. They're like,
I know.
Oh, you know. But yeah, right. That's exactly what I thought too. I'm like, oh, interesting.
I know I'm torn. I might have to visit one of these new distributors that I'm working with at the end of July. They're coming to, they have a branch in Aurora. And the guy's like, oh, it'd be great to see you and meet you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, shit, one, I'm fat. I don't think anything fits anymore. Two, I don't want to cut my hair because I'm going for a 2-year goal of not cutting it. So I don't know what I'm going to do.
Anyway, you can, is there a business chic version of your hair?
I don't know. I can pull it back in a ponytail, I guess.
I mean, that's an interesting thought because your job has always seemed very old school.
Yeah, suit, tie, that sort of thing.
No, yeah, it is. Yeah, but there's also a lot of modern jobs that have suit and tie. I mean, like old school in the sense that, for example, like I think nowadays a lot of businesses or whatever you would be okay with your hair. I mean, not saying like wild. It'll have to be like tidy or whatever, but like, but the fact that you might be, I don't know, you think maybe it won't work out. Like if you go meet an employer or a distributor or something with your hair right now, kind of means that maybe company's a little more old school than I thought it was.
I don't know what they would say. Maybe nothing, but I'm just self-conscious about it. And I don't want to cut it for like 4 hours worth of interaction.
Right.
Anyway, first world problems.
Oh, definitely. Most stuff for copyright infringement.
Well, just that sound. You know what I'm talking about? Like
that's probably like fucking hella like copyrighted.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? Like that.
Yeah. The Law and Order.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Just a dun dun, like the.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a. I don't know what it fucking sounds like. Not a bell, but.
No, I don't know what it is either. It sounds like I don't know, like two metal bodies falling.
Yeah.
One after another.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly like that.
Is that too much?
No. But I think that would be so funny.
Yeah.
Previously.
I think right.
On the Supernatural Current Stories podcast. Dun, dun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what is the majority of this episode about?
Actually, it's about your mom, bro.
Oh, that must be a very wholesome, saintly episode.
Yeah, a lot of Stevie Nicks in here.
Yeah. And Elvis.
Right.